Alright, so we're moving on. We are on page 32 and we're getting ready to do the watermelon block. Okay, so we've already cut some things for the watermelon, alright? First thing we cut was on this light blue fabric with the words. This is the watermelon background, okay? So we have cut this already. What I am going to do is I'm going to add some shape flex to the back of it, okay? Something else we've cut already, when we cut our green, we cut the rind of the watermelon. So we have that one ready to go. And we cut watermelon piece number 2 out of the pink grapefruit. That's the silky solid. Okay, so that's the pieces that we have cut for the watermelon. The last pieces that we have to cut for the watermelon is piece number 1 and piece number 3. So the watermelon has 3 kind of reds for its color when we place them down. All right, I was looking for the picture. So it you know, it has 3 colors of red in there. So we still need to cut 2 more pieces. So those 2 pieces, when you look, they are cut out of the red flowers, and this is the red flowers that we supplied. So we're going to have this peach in the middle and our watermelon 2 pieces on either side. All right, now here's what I was going to offer up if you wanted to. Piece number 1 is the bottom part of the red. This is the middle, and piece 3 is the top where the bite is taken out. All right, just so you have an idea. So 3 is where the bite's taken out. So if you wanted to look at this picture, they did the flower one where the bite was taken out, and the one underneath is more of a red. You have enough of this red. If you wanted to, you could make your watermelon out of these 3. If you wanted three of them, if you wanted to use 3 different kind of reds, okay? That is up to you. So the last piece of fabric that we have right now really to cut is this flower material. All right, now what I want you to know about this flower material is it is the border. It is this inner border that's going to go around the pillow. So you definitely need a quantity of 4 of 1.5 inch strips. So you need to cut your 4 1.5 inch strips. Now what I am going to suggest that you do, they tell you to cut them at 16.5 and 18.5. Your fabric is going to be roughly 21 inches. I would suggest you cut 4 1.5s, edge to edge, from this selvage to the center of that fabric, and you make them all 21 inches. And we'll quilt those all at 21 inches. And then we'll trim them down to size after quilting. I think we will be better off doing that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut those 4 out of this fabric. And then what's left, you can decide if you want to cut only one of the watermelon pieces out. So if you wanted to cut piece number 3 out, that is 5 by 1 inch. And I have it marked here. Piece number 1 that you're cutting out for the watermelon is 4.5 by 2 inches. If you wanted to cut it out of the flower, fine, or you have enough of the red words if you wanted to cut it out of that. Does that make sense to everybody? So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut 4 1.5 inch strips to be my inner border out of this flower material. because that is my inner border. All right. So you have to cut them at 1.5. So I normally cut my first one a little bit bigger than 1.5. And I had marked my fabric, so I'm probably going to use the mark for right now to do my first cut. And then I'll come back and I'll trim off this raw edge once I cut this first strip. So I'm cutting the first one just a little bit bigger than 1.5. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn it around and I'm going to cut off that edge that we tore. All right. And I'm just lining it up 1.5 all the way up, making sure that it looks good. Because I'm lining it all the way up, looking all the way down. And then I'll just take my time when I cut it. And you can see I'm just sliding my hand as I go. All right. So there is strip 1 for my inner border. And you could cut the selvage off later if you'd like to. Now, the next 3 that I cut, I am lining them directly up on the first cut that I did because it should be a straight edge. All right. Okay. Okay, there's like a right and a left hand side of my border, and then we're gonna have a top and a bottom. And again, most of these pillows so far from Kimberbell, those inner borders, when you go to quilt them, they do shrink up. So it's better to cut them just a little bit bigger. I don't mind it so much with how wide it is as much as how long. The width, I mean, is usually okay. It's that length that we end up getting short on when we go to assemble the pillow. So that's why I would just cut all 4 that full length, and then we'll trim them down later after we quilt. All right, so there's my 4 strips, and I will set them aside for when we get ready to do the inner border. All right, and we're going to know these are the inner border because they're the thinner ones. The outer border, the flange one, that is the one that's really thicker. All right, so now I need to get watermelon piece. I either need piece number 1 and I need piece number 3. So number 1 was 4.5 by 2. So that is that piece that originally was not out of the flower material. So if you want to cut that out of this red that you already have, by all means you can do that. And what I think I'm going to do that, and I'm going to cut it right down here. I need 4.5. Well, this is, you know, almost 5 inches that's left. So that's fine that it's a little bit bigger. But what I am going to do is I'm going to cut the selvage off right here. All right. And now I know I need it at 2 inches wide. All right. So I'm going to just turn it around because I always like to use the one side of the ruler with my rotary cutter. So I'm going to cut this at 1 inch, 2 inches wide. So this is what I'm going to use for that piece number 1 of our watermelon. Okay, and then I still need a piece that's 1 inch by 5. So I'm going to cut that out of this one. But you know what? I'm going to cut it up here. Even though I measured it here, I don't want to cut that chunk out of the middle. And these will go away if you iron the material. So if I go to use this for something else, I'll be able to iron that totally off. So this is 6.5 inches, my ruler. So if I line it up here, that's 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inches. So I need a piece that's 1 inch by 5. So I am just going to trim this little piece right out of here. Just like that. All right. So now you could make both sides of the watermelon out of the flower if you want to. Or if you have another red at home you'd like to use, by all means, okay? So I changed it up because we definitely had enough red fabric. All right. So my watermelon is going to have the flower at one end, the pink grapefruit in the middle, and then the red and the words on the one side, and then we have the green Rhine, right? And then this is all my background. So I am only going to put shape flex on the background, so that's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go over to the machine next, and then we'll talk about the quilting design we're going to use. So I'll see you at the machine. All right, so here we are. Again, I want to remind you, I'm doing the watermelon, right? So the watermelon is number 7, and I went to page 4, and number 7 says they used some patriotic number 3 design, and they used a 4x6 size. So it was the same size as we used for 6. So again, I'm going to open the clear blue tiles, block by block, scroll. I'm going to open the 4x6 up on my screen, right, on my machine, and then I'm going to open the watermelon design. And the watermelon design is on a 5x7. Now just remember that even though it says 4x6 design, the design is bigger than 4x6 because it's going to show me where the fabric goes and where the batting goes. It's going to be a finished size of like a 4x6. So it really needs a hoop that's 4.5 by 6.5. But you also can see here that your embroidery design is 2.76 by 4.79 inches, okay? So you need a hoop a little bit bigger than the 4x6. All right, so if you have problems when you open your design, you probably need a bigger hoop. All right, so here we are. We're going to get ready to do this. So I uploaded the 4x6 scroll design, and I loaded the watermelon on top of it. And we are going to start again with the batting placement line. So it's going to do the quilting piece first, right? It's going to do the batting placement line. I'm going to lay the batting down. I'm going to trim it, and then we'll lay the fabric down and we'll trim it. All right, I'm going to hit start. It's going to show me placement for batting. My batting down, and now it's tacking it down. I'm going to go around it twice, and then I'm going to trim it so I don't have my batting in the seams, right? And then the next thing it'll do, I'll get it to stitch the fabric placement line, and I'll lay my background fabric down. And remember, the background fabric is that light blue fabric with the words. Alright, it is stitching my background placement line right now. I'm going to lay my fabric down on there. And we're going to tack that fabric down. And then we're going to make sure we have white in. Right? And we're going to stitch our scroll quilting. So again, you can kind of look at your fabric if you wanted it to place it, you know, one way versus another way versus, you know, how your embroidery is going to stitch out. All right. And this tack down line is going to be in the seam, so we really shouldn't see it. So I am stitching it in the light brown that I finished the last design with. So you might actually see that outline. But again, we're not really going to see it, and it is like a really wide stitch, like a basting stitch. All right, so that's fine that it's done in that color. So I clipped the thread, and I want to get my white now loaded because I was doing all the quilting, remember? We're doing the scroll is what I picked. And I'm doing it all in scroll, and I was choosing to do it all in white. Okay. There we go. Gonna hit start, and that is going to start the quilting off, and then we'll be back when it's complete. All right, I just finished my quilting, so I got some scroll quilting there. And now we're really moving on to the instructions because we already have our watermelon loaded. So we're going to stitch the pieced template. All right, so it's going to stitch out the template you see in number 3 of the instructions. So you'll know where to put piece 1, piece 2, and piece 3 when we get to that. So this is similar to the other piecing that we did. The first fabric's going to go down right side up, and then the other two we're going to go down wrong side up, and it's going to seam, right? And then we'll flip it over. So we're back to doing, you know, that piecing type technique here. So I'm going to stitch number 1 of the embroidery file, all right, and that's going to be our template. So here we go. I am stitching it in white. It should be fine. I should be able to see it. All right, and then we're going to have watermelon piece number 1 ready. So that is the 4.5 by 2 inch one. And remember, I changed it up, and I cut that out of the barbecue and the words. So the red words is what I cut that out of. So I can see here, I can see the bottom of my watermelon. So that bottom of the watermelon is piece number 1. So I am going to place that here. I'm going to place it right side up. And let's see if I can maybe fussy lay it down here a little bit. See what I can do. Yeah, why not? All right, I'm going to hit start. And this is going to show me where I am going to actually place the piece number 2 down and where I'm going to trim this. All right, so remember doing that? Remember we have to trim and everything. So I'm going to trim that little thread there. Now what I like to do is fold the fabric all the way up. I crease it from end to end because I'm going to cut the fabric all the way across to the other end. Just like that, okay? And that's taking the fabric out of the seam, right? So I don't have a really bulky seam. So now the next fabric goes face side down, line it up half and half on each side of that stitch. So you want to center this fabric across there, lay it on there, and then we're going to seam it together. So now we're going to do step number 2 of the embroidery file. So it's going to seam these, and then we're going to flip it up. You know, if you're doing it in a smaller hoop that's vertical, you're going to be flipping it the other way. But mine are all standing. You know, I'm looking at my designs exactly the way they will look on the pillow. All right, so mine are horizontal on my hoop right now because I have a big enough hoop to do that. So piece number 2 is down, and that is that pink grapefruit piece. All right. so now that it's done with that, I'm going to see here if my hoop will move down just a little bit more, and it does. All I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that up. Now this is again where you want to press it. So whether you finger press it, you use a little iron on your ironing board. Don't iron it on your machine, or you can get the little pressing tool out. So that did very well. Now I have writing here because I have the sizes, right? Again, that is just heat away marker. So as soon as I iron that all those marks are going to go away. So I'm not worried about them being there. All right, and now I'm going to stitch number 3 of the embroidery file. So I am on step number 8 because I laid my fabric down. So I'm going to stitch number 3, and that's going to show me where to trim this fabric and where I'm going to place piece number 3 at, right? Okay, so here we go. Stitching number 3 of the embroidery file. And you can see here, you know, the way that Kimberbell tells us, you know, hey, we need this size of fabric because, you know, they always give us a little extra fabric. So right now I'm just going to fold that across. And I am going to cut it all the way across. So this is that pink fabric. There we go. Lay that aside. And the reason I'm trimming that is I don't want that extra fabric in the seam, right? Because we're getting ready to seam the next one down. We are now on page 33, instruction number 12. I'm going to line up fabric number 3. So fabric number 3 is the little red with the pink flowers. All right, so if I want it to look like that, I'll flip it down this way. Or do I want it to look like this? And I'll flip it down this way. So that's why I looked at it first before I flipped it over. Okay, now I'm going to line that up. Center it across both. All right, I'm going to hit start. My hoop's going to move, and then I'll hit start again for me. And now it's going to seam this piece. All right, so that one actually went all the way across. So we are going to fold that fabric up. And I have a little thread right there I would like to get rid of. So I'm going to fold that one up. I'm going to seam it with my finger and see if it's going to lay flat for me. It's not going to lay quite flat enough, I don't think. All right, so the next step is we're going to stitch number 6, and that's going to be the watermelon tack down line. So it is going to tack down the whole watermelon for me. All right, so it's going to go around the entire watermelon, and it doesn't tell me about my stitching. So hopefully I'm going to tack it down in white. Hopefully we don't see that stitching later. It doesn't tell me to avoid a color. But I am going to hold this a little bit till it starts to stitch. And then let it go. So I'm not going to be close to the needle, of course. I just want to hold my fabric down. So I'm going to hit start. We are stitching number 6 of the embroidery file. There we go. So I just wanted to make sure that that fabric kind of laid flat up there. So this is the shape of our watermelon. Now once we are done with this stitch, it tells us that we will trim the fabric close to the stitch line. And we're going to go all the way around the watermelon and stitch and trim that all up. So it's going to look more like a watermelon when I'm done. Okay, now that I have mine looking more like a watermelon, when you cut down where this bite is, this lower part of the bite of the watermelon, you are cutting some of the pink fabric. So just be aware of that, okay? You're cutting through that top layer and that second layer of some of the little bit of the pink fabric. All right, the next step is 17 on page 33. You want to change your color to green, and we want to stitch the Rhine placement line. So I'm going to hit start, and we're going to stitch that, and I'm going to get that fabric ready. So again, that fabric is our green fabric. All right, so I have that ready. So once it shows me where I want to place the fabric, I'm going to lay my fabric there. All right, so I have, I'll just clip this little thread out of there. Okay, gonna lay my green fabric down, right side up. I'm gonna hit start, and now I'm gonna tack that down in place. And of course, once it tacks it down, we are going to trim around it. So it is doing it twice. Alright, so I want to trim that green now. So I'm going to go trim the green, and we'll be back. Okay, so I just finished trimming the green. As you can see, it's looking more and more like a watermelon. We are on step number 21 on the page of 33. We're going to stitch the melon satin outline and splash detail. And that's all going to be in red. So I changed my thread to red, and we're going to stitch all these satin line pieces. So it's going to do that very top part of the watermelon, and then it's going to do those two little splashes that come off that bite in our watermelon. So this satin stitch has got a lot of underlayment under it, it looks like, so it's going to take a little while to stitch it out. So we'll be back when it's done. All right. Okay, so I did the satin stitch up here, and we did the little splashes. The next step is number 22. We're going to stitch the inner Rhine, decorative, and satin outline. So there's this little section in the inside of this watermelon, inside the Rhine. It's going to do a decorative stitch, and I'm actually going to stitch it in a lighter green than the actual outer part. Okay, so I'm going to hit start, and we are doing number 10 of the embroidery file, so it's going to actually do a little bit lighter green decorative stitch on the inner side of the Rhine. Now when that is done, we're going to put in our darker green, and we're going to do the satin stitch on the outer side of the Rhine. Alright, I just loaded in my darker green, so I did the decorative stitch, and now I'm getting ready to do the satin stitch that goes on the outside of the Rhine. And believe it or not, we're almost done with all the quilts. This is our last quilting square to do. We are going to go back, and we're going to talk about quilting this the squares, the pieced blocks, right here. We're going to take them out of the hoop and cut the stabilizer away now, and we're going to quilt those as well as the inner and the outer borders, and you know, we're getting our pillow almost done at that point in time. So let's let this finish doing the satin stitch, and we'll be back. So I don't know if you can see that, but I just finished all of the satin stitching around and everything, and now I'm getting ready to do step number 12 of the embroidery file, and it is, sorry I hit the camera, it's going to do all the little seed details of our watermelon. And then I'm sure I'm going to have some jump stitches I probably need to trim here. And then when that is done, we are done with this particular block of the pillow. Yeah, I see lots of jump stitches, so you're going to have the same issue. I'm cutting those jump stitches on the seeds of the watermelon. Couple more to do. And again, you can do them in black or dark gray. So that is step number 24 of the instructions that it's doing right now. Alright. Let's see if I can pull this out. So you can kind of see it a little bit, but here's what the watermelon block looks like. So I'm just going to trim these up a little bit, and then we'll be back to do the quilting on the piece blocks.